everyone, it's Holly Marie King, and I am here with The Confusing Kidnap, Chapter 9, An Unfair Accusation. So let's just jump in and let's see what happens. Chapter 9, An Unfair Accusation. The forest was very deep. The ground had to stop Helen. The group had to stop. Helen had been whipped so many times in the face, she had to stop. I think this is a good place to stop for the night, Natalie said, looking around. The beds were rolled out and Helen's was sat next to Andrew's. I think sleeping is a good idea. I'm exhausted, Rosie said, yawning. Helen snuggled deep into her bed. She felt unsafe sleeping, scared that Troy would come in the middle of the night. Everyone else fell asleep in an instant. An arm went around her waist. Helen jumped, but noticed it was only Andrew's arm. He looked so peaceful sleeping. Feeling his warmth, Helen drifted off to sleep. Good night, Andrew. I love you, she whispered before she fell asleep. Andrew opened his right eye. He smiled and closed his eyes again. Good night, Helen. I love you too. Come on, you guys. This isn't funny. Monica's worried voice woke Helen up. This is just some cruel dream, Rosie cried. She was rocking back and forth, and her hands covered her ears. Andrew's bed was empty. What's going on? Helen asked drowsily. You were asleep. Why should we tell you? Ellen snapped. She was getting worse every day now. The boys left the girls here, Josh said. They were looking for food and letting the girls rest for the day. Not long after, we heard a cry of pain from the forest. We haven't seen any of them since. What? Helen exclaimed. Her eyes grew wide. How long ago have they been gone? 3 hours at the least, Josh said. Helen walked away from Josh. Helen and Rosie. Come on, you guys. Where are you? Monica cried. She came back over to the small group, laying around the breakfast table. Ellen sitting moodily by a tree. Helen sitting up in her bed, Josh hovering next to Helen's face, Rosie repeating to herself about a cruel dream. I'm pooped, Monica sighed, sitting down. What are we going to do? This is your first warning. Get out of my forest, came a booming voice. There was a loud thud as a bloody John landed on the forest floor. John! Helen screamed and crawled as fast as she could to her injured friend. She put her hand on his face. John, can you hear me? She asked, tears in her eyes. Pain shot into her ankle, and John's cut began to heal. Ah! Helen cried. Huh? John's eyes fluttered open. What's going on? John wiped his eyes awake. His cuts were all gone, and Helen's injury seemed to have gotten worse. Monica stared at Helen. What is it? What's wrong? Josh, did you see what I just saw? Monica asked her demon. I think so, but I think I blinked too soon, Josh said. What's going on? John asked. She took your cuts away and gave herself the injury. Typical, Ellen snapped. But only in her ankle. Monica added. Helen's ankle seemed to have swollen more. Ugh. Helen moaned weakly. She opened her eyes. Oh, John, you're safe. I just had the worst dream. I think you were dead. I'm not sure. So, you weren't listening to my first warning, huh? The voice said angrily. Here is your second. Reggie landed on the ground. His brittle bones cracked in a couple places as he landed. Reggie! John, help me get to Reggie, Helen cried. She pulled at the grass, and she tried her best to move to Reggie, but Burke stood in her way. Burke, what are you doing? Helen demanded. You are not going over there. You do know what happened last time, don't you? Burke asked. Helen looked at her old fragile friend. But I don't care. I just want to help him. It's not right, she cried. She was crying so much she could barely get her words out. Reggie began to breathe heavily. Blood ran out of the corners of his mouth, and his eyes whirled around in their sockets. Reggie! Helen reached her hand as far as she could towards their dying friend. Nothing happened for a split second. Time seemed to stop, but slowly Helen's arm drooped, and Reggie's breathing began to go back to normal. The blood stopped streaming from his mouth, and his eyes went to normal. Helen's body went still, and her ankle swelled a little bit more. She didn't move. The group walked closer to her. Turn her over, John, Monica said quietly, her eyes wide with fear. John carefully moved the girl onto her side so she could breathe. Still no life came from Helen. Come on, Helen, John said. He patted her face. Don't dare die on me, he ordered. Ellen pushed the girl out of John's hands. She's only faking, she yelled. She began to kick the unconscious girl. Wake up! Stop pretending you're asleep. No one realized Andrew and Ron had caught the culprit and were about to come into camp. John ran behind Ellen and grabbed her arm, pulling her away. Stop it, Ellen! You're not helping, he yelled. Ellen punched and kicked, trying to get away from John. Let me go! She's faking! She's faking! She screamed. Monica was at Helen's side. She had the girl's head in her lap, and she stroked her golden brown locks gently. She hummed the song she hummed when she was sad, and tears fell down her cheeks. Josh kneeled on Helen's right. Burke was at Helen's left, and Rosie cried in Natalie's arms. Allison was asleep, not realizing how serious the condition was, just like Reggie, Manny, Maria, Andrew, Ron, and their prisoner. John grabbed Ellen by the waist and sat her down on a stump. She stopped thrashing about. John breathed heavily. Now sit there and don't move. She's lying. She's just pretending to be unconscious. She's sleeping. Ellen screamed. Having problems? Andrew asked. He had the culprit's right arm across his shoulders. Ron just stared at his sister. Something's wrong, Ron said, and without warning he dropped the person they were helping and ran towards his sister. But John grabbed him by his shoulders. Don't go over there right now, John murmured. Why don't you two go over to Reggie and rest for a moment? Okay. Andrew looked at him strangely. Ron followed obediently. John went back to Ellen. Now, what is wrong with you? Helen is seriously injured, John said, out of hearing range from Ron and Andrew. No, she isn't. She's faking, Ellen yelled. John stood up. Fine. Be that way. John walked off towards the group surrounding Helen. He put his arm on Monica's shoulder. Monica, I need you to start getting things together. We have to wait till Reggie is up and going before we leave. We need to tell those three over there, plus Manny and Maria, John said quietly, pointing to the group separate from the one they sat in. But we need someone to stay with the one we captured. So, that is why you'll tell them after the supplies are put away. And someone needs to keep an eye on Ellen over there. Okay, I'll get the supplies together and tell Ron. He'll take it a lot easier than Andrew. Monica hiccuped. She wiped her eyes off and walked off. She began to put her stuff away. Josh slowly followed. He sat in front of Ellen. John sat down next to Helen. Her heart was still pumping, but she was fading. Natalie, check on your husband now, or we may lose Helen here, John said, wide-eyed. Natalie nodded and left Rosie there to cry on her own. Ron walked over, fed up with being out of the loop. How did this happen? Ron exclaimed, jumping back. He ran over to the person they had brought over. He shook the woman awake. Son, how do you get out of this forest? He demanded. Huh? The woman yawned and stretched. Ron, the woman has been through a lot. Why are you in such a hurry? Andrew asked, stretching as well. He was exhausted from the long day's work. Ron turned around wildly. Have you seen Helen? He demanded. Andrew stiffened. Why? Is something wrong? He sat up quickly. Son, where is your nearest doctor? John exclaimed. He had overheard the woman's name when Ron was shaking her awake. John stood up and walked over to Monica. Is all the stuff packed? He asked quickly. Monica nodded. Her hands were shaking. Spirits, get into your humans' bodies now, he ordered. Andrew's heart was pounding fast. What's going on, guys? His voice shook and he began to breathe in short gasps. John grabbed Son's arm. Son, can you lead us out of the forest in the quickest, safest route? He asked her. Son nodded. Ron, can you help Ellen out of the forest? Ron nodded, letting go of Son. Andrew, I need you to be in the front of the group carrying... John gulped down his tears. He felt it was his duty to be strong for everyone. Carrying who? Andrew demanded. He couldn't take it anymore. Carrying Helen. John finished. He paused for a moment. Come on, we have to get moving. Monica, get the supplies. I'll help Reggie. Son, you get Andrew and Helen out of here as fast as you can and to the nearest doctor. We'll be right behind you, but you have to go now or we'll lose Helen. Son nodded. Andrew staggered after Son, but when he saw Helen, he picked her up in his arms and walked confidently behind Son. Don't talk like that. Helen will make it, Aunt Monica shouted. John walked over to Monica and grabbed her shoulders. I'm sorry, but we can't stay here. We have to move on. So, go quickly after the group. Monica put the pack for their supplies on and walked as fast as she could after Andrew and Son. Are you all right, Ron? Excuse me. Why aren't they running? Like, they're all just, like, walking fast. Helen's dying. We're just going to walk fast. No big deal. Yeah, I got it, Ron shouted, pulling a kicking, punching, and screaming Ellen over his shoulder. He, too, was leaving, but he turned to John. When we have Helen somewhere safe, you can stop being strong for us. That burden is too hard to bear for anyone. But thank you for being in charge when we needed. With that, Ron followed Monica, because that was no. Okay, Reggie, it's time to go, John said, pulling the old man over his shoulder and began to follow Ron. All right. I actually left them, leaving it on a pretty intense cliffhanger. Will Helen survive? Find out next week on Chapter 10. But anyway, if you guys are interested in the book, go ahead and read it in the description below, places you can buy it if you are interested, because like I have said, you won't be supporting me by buying my own book. I make like 10 cents. So, if you're interested, go right ahead. But anyway, hopefully I will see you guys next time. Bye!